The McDonnell Douglas, now Boeing, F-15E Strike Eagle is an American all-weather multi-role strike fighter. Derived from the McDonnell Douglas F-15 Eagle. The F-15E was designed in the 1980s for long-range, high-speed interdiction without relying on escort or electronic warfare aircraft. United States Air Force, U.S. Air Force, F-15E Strike Eagles can be distinguished from other U.S. Eagle variants by darker aircraft camouflage and conformal fuel tanks mounted along the engine intake ramps, although CFTs can also be mounted on earlier F-15 variants. The Strike Eagle has been deployed for military operations in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and Libya, among others. During these operations, the F-15E has carried out deep strikes against high-value targets, combat air patrols, and provided close air support for coalition troops. It has also been exported to several countries. Development. Origins. The McDonnell Douglas F-15 Eagle had been introduced by the United States Air Force, U.S. Air Force, as a replacement for its fleet of McDonnell Douglas F-4 Phantom IIS. However, unlike the F-4, the F-15 was designed for the air superiority mission with little consideration for a ground attack role. The F-15 Special Project Office opposed the idea of F-15s performing the interdiction mission, giving rise to the phrase "not a pound for air to ground." In service, the F-15 has been a very successful fighter, with over 100 aerial combat victories and 0 losses in air-to-air combat as of 2007. Despite a lack of official interest, McDonnell Douglas quietly worked on an F-15-derived interdictor fighter. The company envisaged the aircraft as a replacement for the General Dynamics F-111 and the remaining F-4s, as well as to augment the existing F-15s. In 1978, the U.S. Air Force initiated the Tactical All-Weather Requirement Study, TORS, which looked at McDonnell Douglas's proposal and other options such as the purchase of further F-111Fs. TORS recommended the F-15E as the U.S. Air Force's future strike platform. In 1979, McDonnell Douglas and Hughes began a close collaboration on the development of the F-15E's air-to-ground capabilities. To assist in the F-15E's development, McDonnell Douglas modified the second TF-15A prototype, AF serial number 71-0291, as a demonstrator. The aircraft, known as the Advanced Fighter Capability Demonstrator, first flew on July 8, 1980. It was previously used to trial conformal fuel tanks, CFT, initially designed for the F-15 under the designation Fast Pack, with fast standing for fuel and sensor, tactical. It was subsequently fitted with a PAVE-TAC laser designator targeting pod to allow the independent delivery of guided bombs. The demonstrator was displayed at the 1980 Farnborough Airshow. Enhanced Tactical Fighter. In March 1981, the U.S. Air Force announced the Enhanced Tactical Fighter, ETF, program to procure a replacement for the F-111. The program was later renamed the Dual Role Fighter, DRF, competition. The concept envisioned an aircraft capable of launching deep air interdiction missions without requiring additional support by fighter escort or jamming. General Dynamics submitted the F-16XL, while McDonnell Douglas submitted the F-15E. The Panavia Tornado was also a candidate, but since the aircraft lacked a credible air superiority fighter capability, coupled with the fact that it is not American-made, it was not seriously considered. The DRF evaluation team, under the direction of Brigadier General Ronald W. Yates, ran from 1981 through April 30, 1983, during which the F-15E logged more than 200 flights, demonstrated takeoff weight of more than 75,000 pounds, 34 tons, and validated 16 different weapons-carrying configurations. McDonnell Douglas, to assist 71-0291 in the evaluation, added to the program other F-15s, designated 78-0468, 80-0055 and 81-0063. The single-engine F-16XL was a promising design which, with its radically redesigned cranked delta wing, greatly boosted performance. If selected, the single and two-seat versions were to be designated F-16E and F-16F, respectively. On February 24, 1984, the U.S. Air Force chose the F-15E. Key factors in the decision were the F-15E's lower development costs compared to the F-16XL, $270 million versus $470 million, a belief that the F-15E had future growth potential, and possessing twin-engine redundancy. The U.S. Air Force was initially expected to procure 400 aircraft, a figure later revised to 392. Construction of the first 3 F-15Es started in July 1985. The first of these, 86-0183, made its maiden flight on December 11, 1986. Piloted by Gary Jennings, the aircraft reached a maximum speed of Mach 0.9 and an altitude of 40,000 feet, 12,000 m, during the 75-minute flight. This aircraft had the full F-15E avionics suite and the redesigned front fuselage, but not the aft fuselage and the common engine bay. The latter was featured on 86-0184, while 86-0185 incorporated all the changes of the F-15E from the F-15. On March 31, 1987, the first officially completed F-15E made its first flight. The first production F-15E was delivered to the 405th Tactical Training Wing, Luke Air Force Base, Arizona in April 1988. Production continued into the 2000s with 236 produced for the U.S. Air Force through 2001. Upgrade programs and replacement. The F-15E will be upgraded with the Raytheon APG-82 Active Electronically Scanned Array, AESA, radar after 2007, and the first test radar was delivered to Boeing in 2010. It combines the processor of the APG-79 used on the F/A-18E/F Super Hornet with the antenna of the APG-63, V, 3 AESA being fitted on the F-15C. The new radar upgrade is to be part of the F-15E radar modernization program. The new radar was named APG-63, V, 4 until it received the APG-82 designation in 2009. The RMP also includes a wideband radome, to allow the AESA to operate on more radar frequencies, and improvements to the environment control and electronic warfare systems. Having a sturdier airframe rated for twice the lifetime of earlier variants, the F-15E is expected to remain in service past 2025. As of December 2012, the U.S. Air Force F-15E fleet had an average age of 21 years and an average airframe flying time of 6,000 hours. In 2012, the Air Force was reportedly considering future options. There is no slated replacement for the F-15E. One choice is the F-35 Lightning II, set to replace other attack aircraft such as the F-16 Falcon and A-10 Thunderbolt II. A F-35E variant was studied. It would be complex, and thus expensive, to add a second seat to the F-35, especially to preserve its stealth profile. Providing for greater range and payload would also be difficult tasks. Alternatively, the role could be covered by a combination of fighter and bomber aircraft, such as the planned long-range strike bomber. The F-15E may also be replaced by a clean-sheet 6th-generation aircraft design. ALISA. On March 24, 2014, Boeing won a $30.6 million contract from DARPA as part of the Airborne Launch Assist Space Access (ALISA) program. The goal of the program is to cut the cost of putting microsatellites into orbit by 66% through advances in launch systems. Under the 11-month contract, Boeing will build 12 24 feet, 7.3 m, launch vehicles, each with a payload capability of up to 100 pounds, 45 kilograms. An ALISA vehicle is to be fitted under an F-15E, which will climb to 40,000 feet, then be released and fire its 4 engines to reach low Earth orbit. Awarding the contract to Boeing would make use of the F-15E as the carriage vehicle, as previous design contracts had been given to Lockheed Martin to use the F-22 Raptor and Virgin Galactic to use their Spaceship Two aircraft. DARPA had previously insisted they wanted to select an aircraft they would not need to modify heavily to carry and launch the ALISA payload. Design. The F-15E's deep strike mission is a radical departure from the original intent of the F-15, since the F-15 was designed as an air superiority fighter under the mantra "not a pound for air-to-ground." The basic airframe, however, proved versatile enough to produce a very capable strike fighter. The F-15E, while designed for ground attack, retains the air-to-air lethality of the F-15, and can defend itself against enemy aircraft. The F-15E prototype was a modification of the two-seat F-15B. The F-15E, despite its origins, includes significant structural changes and much more powerful engines. The aft fuselage was designed to incorporate the more powerful engines with advanced engine bay structures and doors. The advanced structures utilized superplastic forming and diffusion bonding, SPF/DB, technologies. The back seat is equipped for a weapon systems officer, WSO pronounced WISO, to work the new air-to-ground avionics. The WSO uses multiple screens to display information from the radar, electronic warfare, or thermographic cameras, monitor aircraft or weapon status and possible threats, select targets, and use an electronic moving map to navigate. Two hand controls are used to select new displays and to refine targeting information. Displays can be moved from one screen to another, chosen from a menu of display options. Unlike earlier two-place jets, e.g. the F-14 Tomcat and Navy variants of the F-4, whose back seat lacked flying controls, the back seat of the F-15E cockpit is equipped with its own stick and throttle so the WSO can take over flying, albeit with reduced visibility. To extend its range, the F-15E is fitted with two conformal fuel tanks, CFTs, that hug the fuselage. These produce lower drag than conventional underwing/underbelly drop tanks. They carry 750 US gallons, 2,800 liters, of fuel, and house 6 weapons hardpoints in 2 rows of 3 in tandem. Unlike conventional drop tanks, CFTs cannot be jettisoned, thus the increased range is offset by the degraded performance from the increased drag and weight compared to a clean configuration. Similar tanks can be mounted on the F-15C/D and export variants, and the Israeli Air Force makes use of this option on their fighter variant F-15S as well as their F-15I variant of the Strike Eagle, but the F-15E is the only U.S. variant to be routinely fitted with CFTs. The Strike Eagle's Tactical Electronic Warfare System, TEWS, integrates all countermeasures on the craft, radar warning receivers, RWR, radar jammer, radar, and chaff/flare dispensers are all tied to the TEWS to provide comprehensive defense against detection and tracking. This system includes an externally mounted ALQ-131 ECM pod which is carried on the center line pylon when required. The APG-70 radar system allows air crews to detect ground targets from longer ranges. One feature of this system is that after a sweep of a target area, the crew freezes the air-to-ground map then goes back into air-to-air mode to clear for air threats. During the air-to-surface weapon delivery, the pilot is capable of detecting, targeting, and engaging air-to-air targets while the WSO designates the ground target. The APG-70 is to be replaced by the AN/APG-82, V1 Active Electronically Scanned Array, AESA, radar, which began flight tests in January 2010 with initial operational capability expected in 2014. Its inertial navigation system uses a laser gyroscope to continuously monitor the aircraft's position and provide information to the central computer and other systems, including a digital moving map in both cockpits. The low-altitude navigation and targeting infrared for night, lantern, system is mounted externally under the engine intakes. It allows the aircraft to fly at low altitudes, at night, and in any weather conditions, to attack ground targets with a variety of precision-guided and unguided weapons. The lantern system gives the F-15E exceptional accuracy in weapons delivery day or night and in poor weather, and consists of 2 pods attached to the exterior of the aircraft. At night, the video picture from the lantern can be projected on the HUD, producing an infrared image of the ground. The navigation pod contains a terrain-following radar which allows the pilot to safely fly at a very low altitude following cues displayed on a heads-up display. This system also can be coupled to the aircraft's autopilot to provide hands-off terrain following capability. Additionally, the pod contains a forward-looking infrared system which is projected on the pilot's HUD, which is used during nighttime or low-visibility operations. The IN/AAQ-13 NAV pod is installed beneath the right engine intake. The targeting pod contains a laser designator and a tracking system that mark an enemy for destruction as far away as 10 miles, 16 kilometers. Once tracking has been started, targeting information is automatically handed off to infrared homing air-to-surface missiles or laser-guided bombs. The targeting pod is mounted beneath the left engine intake. Configurations may be either the IN/AAQ-14 target pod, IN/AAQ-28 lightning target pod, or the IN/AAQ-33 sniper advanced targeting pod. The F-15E carries most air-to-ground weapons in the U.S. Air Force inventory. It is also armed with AIM-9 Sidewinders and AIM-120 AMRAAMs. Since the Strike Eagle retains the counter-air capabilities from its Eagle lineage, it is regularly trained for counter-air missions, and fully capable for offensive counter-air. Like the F-15C, the Strike Eagle also carries an internally mounted General Electric M61A 120mm cannon with 500 rounds, which is effective against enemy aircraft and soft ground targets. The MIDS Fighter Data Link Terminal, produced by B Systems, improves situational awareness and communications capabilities via the Link 16 data link. Since 2004, South Korean firm LIGNEX1 has been manufacturing the F-15's head-up display. A total number of 150 HUDs were delivered by 2011. LIGNEX1 had been a participant in the F-15K program as a subcontractor to Rockwell Collins. LIGNEX1 is also preparing to manufacture F-15's new multifunction display and flight control computer. Also since 2004, Korea Aerospace Industries, KAI, has produced the wings and forward fuselages of the F-15. In 2008, KAI established another production line for Singapore's F-15SG. KAI is involved in the development and manufacture of the Conformal Weapons Bay, CWB, to be used on the F-15 Silent Eagle. The engines used for the first batches of F-15E Strike Eagle and its variants are Pratt & Whitney F-100 PW220. Later batches feature the more powerful P&W F-100 PW229 engines. The export version for Saudi Arabia and Israel uses P&W F-100-229 engines. In 2008, Saudi Arabia decided to re-engine their F-15S fleet aircraft with General Electric F-110 GE-129 engines. Their F-15SA fleet will also be powered by GE F-110 engines. The South Korean F-15K came with two different engine variants. The first batch are powered by GE F-110 engines, while the second batch are powered by P&W F-100 engines. The Singapore Air Force equipped their F-15SG fleet with GE F-110 engines. Operational history. United States. The F-15E reached initial operational capability on September 30, 1989 at Seymour Johnson Air Force Base in North Carolina with the 4th Tactical Fighter Wing, 336th Tactical Fighter Squadron. Operations Desert Shield and Desert Storm. The F-15E was deployed in response to Iraq's invasion of Kuwait in August 1990 for Operation Desert Shield. The 336th Tactical Fighter Squadron flew to Seeb Air Base in Oman to begin training exercises in anticipation of an Iraqi attack on Saudi Arabia. In December, the 335th and 336th Squadrons relocated to Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia, closer to Iraq's border. At the start of Operation Desert Storm, 24 F-15Es launched an attack on 5 fixed Scud installations in western Iraq on January 17, 1991. Missions against Scud sites continued through that night with a second strike of 21 F-15Es. At nighttime, F-15Es flew hunter missions over western Iraq, searching for mobile Scud launchers. By conducting random bombings in suspected areas, it was hoped to deter the Iraqis from setting up for a Scud launch. On the opening night of the war, an F-15E fired a AIM-9 Sidewinder at a MiG-29, which failed to hit its target. Other F-15Es simultaneously and unsuccessfully engaged the lone MiG-29, which was eventually brought down by a missile of unknown source. On January 18, during a strike against a petrol oil and lubricant plant near Basra, an F-15E was lost to enemy fire. The pilot and WSO were killed. F-15E crews described this mission as the most difficult and dangerous of the war, as it was heavily defended by SA-3S, SA-6S, SA-8S, and Rolands, as well as by anti-aircraft artillery. 2 nights later, a second and final F-15E was downed by an Iraqi SA-2. The crew survived and evaded capture for several days and made in contact with coalition aircraft, but rescue was not launched due to security issues. One airman failed to identify himself with proper codes. The 2 airmen were later captured by the Iraqis. F-15Es were able to destroy 18 Iraqi jets on the ground at Talil Air Base using GBU-12S and CBU-87S. On February 14, an F-15E scored its only air-to-air kill of the war, a Mi-24 helicopter. While responding to a request for help by U.S. Special Forces, 5 Iraqi helicopters were spotted. The lead F-15E of 2 acquired a helicopter via its FLIR in the process of unloading Iraqi soldiers, and released a GBU-10 bomb. The F-15E crew thought the bomb had missed its target and were preparing to use a Sidewinder when the helicopter was destroyed. The Special Forces team estimated that the Hind was roughly 800 feet, 240 m, over the ground when the 2,000 pounds, 910 kilograms, bomb hit its target. As coalition bombing operation had commenced, the F-15Es disengaged from combat with the remaining helicopters. F-15Es attacked various heavily defended targets throughout Iraq, prioritizing Scud missile sites. Missions with the objective of killing Iraqi President Saddam Hussein were undertaken with several suspected locations bombed by F-15Es. Prior to the operation's ground war phase, F-15Es conducted tank plinking missions against Iraqi vehicles in Kuwait. Following 42 days of heavy combat, a ceasefire came into effect on March 1, 1991, leading to the establishment of northern and southern no-fly zones over Iraq. Operations Southern Watch and Northern Watch. Following Desert Storm, 2 no-fly zones over Iraq were set up, and enforced typically by US and UK aircraft. In one incident, an attack on up to 600 Kurdish refugees by Iraqi helicopters at Sham Jamal, northern Iraq, was observed by a flight of F-15Es. As they were not allowed to open fire, the F-15Es instead conducted several high-speed passes as close as possible to the Iraqi helicopters to create severe wake turbulence, while aiming lasers at the helicopters' cockpits to attempt to blind their crews. This caused the crash of one Hind. Afterwards, U.S. Air Force leadership ordered F-15Es not to fly below 10,000 feet, 3,000 m, to deter a repetition. F-15Es of the 391st Fighter Squadron, 492d Fighter Squadron, and 494th Fighter Squadron regularly deployed to Turkey throughout the 1990s. In January 1993, Iraqi targets in breach of the ceasefire agreement below the 32nd parallel north were attacked. 10 F-15Es conducted a punitive strike days later. Most missions were of a defensive nature. The Strike Eagles carried a flexible range of weapons on a typical mission. AWACS aircraft were in close contact with F-15E crews, who would receive new taskings while airborne and thus could fly unplanned attacks on Iraqi targets. After 1993, violations of the no-fly zones were minimal as Iraq staged a minor withdrawal. In 1997, Turkey approved the creation of Operation Northern Watch, ONW, and permitted U.S. forces to use the Incirlik Air Base. In December 1998, Operation Desert Fox was conducted when Iraq refused UNSCOM inspections. On December 28, 1998, 3 F-15Es each dropped 2 GBU-12 500-pound precision-guided munitions, PGMs, to successfully strike an SA-3 tracking radar and optical guidance unit. After Desert Fox, Iraq stepped up its violations of the no-fly zones, thus a number of retaliatory and pre-planned strikes were conducted by F-15Es. In ONW alone, weapons were expended on at least 105 days. Between 24 and January 26, 1999, F-15Es expended several AGM-130s and GBU-12s against SAM sites in northern Iraq near Mosul. Several F-15Es also flew in support of Operation Provide Comfort and Operation Provide Comfort 2. Operations in the Balkans. Operation Deny Flight was a United Nations enforced no-fly zone over Bosnia and Herzegovina due to the deteriorating situation in the Balkans. In August 1993, F-15Es from 492D and 494th FS deployed to Aviano, Italy. In late 1993, NATO ordered a limited F-15E strike at Udbina airfield, targeting Serbian forces in neighboring Croatia. 8 F-15Es armed with GBU-12s took off to attack an SA-6 anti-aircraft vehicle. The mission was cancelled mid-flight over the application of stringent rules of engagement. In December 1993, F-15Es launched to destroy a pair of SA-2 sites which had fired upon 2 Royal Navy Sea Harrier FRS-1s. In August 1995, F-15Es of 90th Fighter Squadron joined the 2 other squadrons. The 492D and 494th flew over 2,500 sorties since deny flight had begun. 2,000 of these were by 492D. In August 1995, in support of NATO's Operation Deliberate Force, F-15Es flew strike missions against Serbian armor and logistics around the Bosnian capital, Sarajevo. On September 9, an F-15E deployed the first GBU-15 bomb for the type. A total of 9 were dropped against Bosnian Serb ground forces and air defense targets around Banja Luka. In response to the displacement of Kosovars and the Serbian government's rejection of a NATO ultimatum, Operation Allied Force was launched in March 1999. A total of 26 F-15Es flew the first strikes of Allied force against Serb surface-to-air missile sites, anti-aircraft batteries, and early warning radar stations. Strike Eagles were deployed to Aviano as well as RAF Lakenheath in the UK. In theatre, F-15Es conducted close air support missions, a new idea in the late 1990s which has since become a popular concept within the U.S. Air Force. Missions typically lasted around 7.5 hours, included 2 aerial refuelings. F-15Es would carry a mix of air-to-air and air-to-ground munitions to perform both combat air patrol duties as well as strike missions in the same mission. Mobile SAM launchers posed a considerable threat to NATO aircraft and had made successful shoot-downs, most notably of a Lockheed F-117 Nighthawk. In order to strike from increased distances, the F-15E was equipped with the AGM-130, which provided a standoff strike capability. Operation Enduring Freedom. Weeks after the September 11 attacks in 2001, the 391st Fighter Squadron deployed to Ahmed Al-Jaber Air Base, Kuwait, to support Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan. F-15Es met little resistance during initial missions. In the first night, targets ranged from Taliban military structures and supply depots, to Al-Qaeda training camps and caves were the main targets. Both the AGM-130 and GBU-15 2,000 pounds, 910 kilograms, bombs were expended. This was the GBU-15's first combat usage. GBU-24s and GBU-28s were used against reinforced targets, command and control centers and cave entrances. F-15Es often operated in pairs alongside pairs of F-16Cs. Within weeks of the start of combat operations, there was a lack of targets to strike as nearly all targets had been already destroyed. The Taliban had access to SA-7 and FIM-92 Stinger portable surface-to-air missiles, posing no threat to most aircraft flying above 7,000 feet, 2,100 m. Additionally, fixed SAM sites near cities as Mazar-i-Sharif and Bagram were struck early on. Afghanistan had rapidly become a low-threat environment for air operations. Aircraft commonly flew on-call support missions for Allied ground forces. F-15Es usually carried Mk-82 and GBU-12 bombs in this role. Other weapons were sometimes carried. During one mission a GBU-28, 2 GBU-24s and 6 GBU-12s were released. Frequent targets during the rest of the war were individual insurgents, light vehicles, and supply convoys. Cannon fire was often expended as well as bombs from F-15Es. It was during combat over Afghanistan that 391st Cruise conducted the longest fighter mission in history, lasting a total of 15.5 hours, 9 of those hours spent flying over the target area. 2 F-15Es attacked 2 Taliban command and control facilities, 2 buildings suspected of being used by Taliban fighters, and a roadblock. The F-15Es refueled 12 times during the mission. On March 4, another incident now known as the Battle of Roberts Ridge involved several F-15Es that had embarked on a close air support mission for ground forces. Aircraft destroyed a Taliban observation post and responded to nearby enemy mortar fire upon Navy SEAL forces on a search for an ambushed MH-47E Chinook in the Shah-i-Kot Valley. Several bombs were dropped as the SEAL team still took fire, however one bomb missed due to the wrong coordinates being entered by the aircrew. An MH-47 carrying a rescue team was downed by an RPG while attempting to support the SEALs. Following refueling, the F-15Es dropped a further 11 GBU-12s in coordination with ground forces, and fired their cannons on Taliban forces in close proximity to the survivors of the downed MH-47. A section of F-16s from 18th Fighter Squadron made strafing passes as well until cannon ammunition was depleted, before resorting to further bomb drops. The F-15Es were affected by technical problems involving both radios and weapons that had failed. Several GBU-12s were dropped before returning to Al Jaber in Kuwait. Years later, several incidents have occurred. On August 23, 2007, a friendly fire incident involved an F-15E mistakenly dropping a 500 pounds, 230 kilograms, bomb on British forces. 3 soldiers were killed. The stated cause was confusion between the air controller and the F-15E crew on the bombing coordinates. On September 13, 2009, an F-15E shot down a non-responsive MQ-9 Reaper drone over northern Afghanistan to prevent it entering foreign airspace. Operation Iraqi Freedom. In late 2002, during tension over suspected Iraqi possession of weapons of mass destruction, the 4th Fighter Wing at Seymour Johnson Air Force Base was ordered to maintain at least one squadron ready to deploy to the Persian Gulf. During January 2003, the 336th was deployed to Al Udeid Air Base, Qatar, a total of 24 aircraft being deployed in coordination with planners of the Combined Air Operations Center at Prince Sultan Air Base, Saudi Arabia. In late January, the F-15Es began flying in support of Operation Southern Watch, typically performing surveillance and reconnaissance missions. Additional missions included simulated combat against potential Iraqi targets and regional familiarization with local procedures and rules of engagement. During OSW, F-15Es attacked a number of targets in southern and western Iraq, including radars, radio communications and relay stations, command and control sites, and air defenses. On one night, 4 F-15Es released multiple GBU-24s on the Iraqi Republican Guard/Ba'ath Party HQ in Basra, while another flight of 4 destroyed a nearby air defense sector HQ with 6 GBU-10s. Towards the end of February, the 336th received additional aircrews, many of which being drafted from the 2 non-deployable squadrons at Seymour Johnson, the 333d and 334th Fighter Squadrons, and 391st Fighter Squadron at Mountain Home Air Force Base, for a total of 4 aircrews per F-15E. In early March, the 335th Fighter Squadron's personnel and aircraft joined the 336th at Al Udeid. One objective was the destruction of Iraq's air defenses and early warning radar network near the border with Jordan, allowing F-16s and Special Forces helicopters to operate from Jordan at the outset of the war. Several radar sites and radio relay stations were hit in western Iraq near the H-3 airfield. During these missions, coalition jets met with heavy anti-aircraft fire. On March 19, as F-117 Nighthawks dropped bombs over Baghdad, targeting a house where Saddam Hussein was believed to be, F-15Es dropped GBU-28s around the H-3 airfield. On March 20, when the war effectively began, F-15Es fired AGM-130s against key communication, command and control buildings, and other key targets in Baghdad. A few of the weapons missed intended targets, possibly caused by the jamming operations of EA-6B prowlers in the vicinity. On April 3, 2003, an F-15E pilot mistook a M270 Multiple Launch Rocket System, MLRS, for an Iraqi surface-to-air missile site and dropped a 500 pounds, 230 kilograms, laser-guided bomb, killing 3 and wounding 5 others. On April 7, 2003, an F-15E, 88-1694, crewed by Captain Eric Doss and Major William Watkins, performed a critical interdiction mission in support of Special Forces. Doss and Watkins crashed while bombing targets around Tikrit, probably shot down by AAA fire. The crew were posthumously awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross and the Purple Heart for their actions. During the war, F-15Es were credited with destroying 60% of the total force of the Iraqi Medina Republican Guard. They also scored hits on 65 MiGs on the ground, and destroyed key air defense and command buildings in Baghdad. During the war, F-15Es worked closely with other jets that were deployed to Al Udeid, including RAF F/A-18S, U.S. Air Force F-16S, and F-117S, RAF Panavia Tornado fighters, and a detachment of U.S. Navy F-14S from VF-154. Operation Odyssey Dawn. Following the adoption of United Nations Security Council Resolution 1973 on March 17, 2011, 18 U.S. Air Force F-15E fighters, and a variety of other NATO and Allied aircraft were deployed to enforce the Libyan no-fly zone as part of Operation Odyssey Dawn. On March 21, 2011, an F-15E Strike Eagle, tail number 91304, from the 492 DFS crashed near Benghazi, Libya. Both crew members parachuted into territory held B.
Please subscribe and thanks for watching.